You're watching Mr. 13 O'Clock, where silence speaks louder in the dark and shadows never sit still. Tonight, we're sinking into the flickering gloom of the silver screen, where some seats were never meant to be filled. If you genuinely enjoy what I do here, consider subscribing and let me know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background. And let's slip quietly into tonight's unsettling stories. Do not thread or screen reel number 7 from Theater 9's archive. That's all it said. No explanation. No name. Just a yellowed slip of paper taped beside the microwave, curling at the corners like it had been there longer than anyone realized. Theaters don't often keep reels anymore. Everything's digital. But this place, Crescent Cinema, was different. It still had a working 35mm setup in Theater 9. The whole room was cordoned off, never used. They said the projector hadn't run since 1998. I was a new hire, just needed weekend cash during school. And I loved film, real film. So, of course, when I found the padlocked door to Theater 9 slightly ajar one night after closing, I couldn't stop myself from slipping in. Dust choked the air. Rows of decaying velvet seats sloped downward to a screen eaten by mold. The air smelled like vinegar and iron. And there it was, atop a rusting metal reel cabinet. Reel number 7, still labeled in marker, the last reel. I took it upstairs to the projection booth. I thought maybe it was an old local short or something forgotten. I wanted to preserve it. That's how I justified it. But I didn't thread it into the machine that night. Something about the brittle edge of the celluloid made my fingers recoil. I waited. The next night, I asked Jamie, one of the managers, if she knew anything about it. Her eyes darkened instantly. She dropped the popcorn scoop, straightened up, and said quietly, "You didn't watch it, right?" I shook my head. "Good. Don't." She refused to say more. But later, I heard her on the phone in the hallway whispering something like, "It's surfaced again." "No, not yet. I think you just found it." 3 nights later, I stayed after close. I told myself it was curiosity, but really, it felt more like the reel was pulling me. I threaded it. The old projector wheezed to life like something groaning awake after a long sleep. There was no countdown, no credits, no title card, just a black and white scene of the empty theater I was sitting in. Same rotting seats, same peeling paint, even the water stain in the upper right ceiling tile. But in the grainy footage, someone was sitting 3 rows ahead of where I stood watching. A man in a long coat, perfectly still, facing forward. I paused the reel, rushed down to the theater floor. No one. Empty. I went back up, played it again. Now, the man was 2 rows closer. I hit stop. Silence. My skin crawled. While I looked out the projection window, the figure in the film seemed to have shifted slightly. Not just in position. It looked sharper, crisper, almost colorized. I rewound the reel just a few seconds back, but it wouldn't rewind. It only moved forward. And when it played again, the man was now sitting directly under the projection booth window, looking up at me. I backed away from the window, heart pounding. The film buzzed behind me, its fluttering spool accelerating like it was chewing through frames faster and faster. I yanked the power. The projector kept running. Then the bulb inside blew out. Everything plunged into dark silence. I stood frozen for what felt like hours before finally flicking on my phone's flashlight. I went down to the theater. No one was there, but the seat below the booth, it was still warm. The next day, Jamie called in sick. I called her, but she didn't answer. Her voicemail was full. I tried to report what happened, but no one believed me. Eventually, I told myself it was a prank reel, some art project, until 2 weeks later when I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a short note in block letters. "You watched it. He sees you now. Keep the reel spinning." Inside the envelope was a thumb drive. I plugged it in against every instinct. It contained only one video file. The footage was of my apartment hallway, shot from behind my front door. Timestamp 3 nachts. The night I screened the reel. Frame by frame, the footage slowly zoomed in until the lens pressed against the peephole. Then it went black. Over the next month, things began to decay around me. My coffee turned moldy hours after brewing. My reflection in the bathroom mirror sometimes lagged behind my movement. I'd come home to the sound of old film reels spooling, but nothing would be there. And always when I played music or white noise, it would skip at odd intervals, landing on warped bits of sound that vaguely resembled breathing. I threw the reel away, burned it even, but it doesn't matter. It's not the film that matters. It's the watcher, the one captured in it, or maybe the one capturing us. The last thing I ever saw before I stopped sleeping entirely was on a broken TV in the theater lobby, caught in static. A single black and white frame. Me, standing in the projection booth. And behind me, a second silhouette, watching. The smell was the first thing that stood out. No butter, no salt, no warm kernels popping behind a glass wall. Just cold air and something musty, like dried paper and old curtains. The old Glenvale Theater reopened last summer under new ownership. A restored 1940s cinema with Art Deco columns, neon trim, and velvet everything. Nostalgic, classy, and oddly silent. But what struck everyone, what patrons whispered to one another after screenings, was that the concession stand was always closed. No popcorn, no candy, no drinks. The staff never addressed it. They just smile and say, "We don't serve food here." And if you pushed, their smiles got just a bit tighter. I worked there for 3 weeks before I asked too many questions. My friend Amanda got me the job. She was already a floor manager. It was good money, quiet shifts. But something was off. The staff barely talked to each other. No laughter, no jokes, no music in the break room. One night, after our last screening, Amanda took me aside. "You like old buildings, right?" I nodded. "There's something in the basement you should see." She brought me to a narrow hallway behind Theater 3. I'd never seen the door at the end before. No handed, just an old brass keyhole. Amanda produced a key from around her neck and opened it. The smell hit first, damp and coppery. It was a storage area, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, but something about them felt wrong. The cardboard was swollen and dark-stained in places. "These are the old supplies," she said, "from the original Glenvale." She pulled one box down and opened it. Inside were unopened bags of popcorn kernels, candy boxes, fountain syrup canisters, all perfectly sealed, all covered in tiny black handprints. I reached for one bag, and Amanda slapped my hand. "No, don't touch it. Not unless you want them to follow you." She stared at the boxes with this strange mixture of guilt and fear. Back then, they served everything. Popcorn, soda, the works. But kids kept going missing. During the trailers. Not after. Not before. Always during the trailers. They'd vanish from their seats. No one saw them leave. Everyone thought it was kidnappings, she whispered, until someone opened the popcorn machine. She didn't say what they found inside. I didn't ask. After that night, I started paying attention during the trailers. Every screening, during the previews, the light would flicker strangely. Almost like the film was being pulled through too fast. The screen would briefly shimmer, not like digital distortion, but like something behind it was breathing. One night, an older woman in row D stood up and began screaming during a Pixar trailer. Not during a horror film, not during a tense moment, just a cartoon. She said a hand reached out of the screen. A small, blackened hand. She said it tried to pull her forward. Security escorted her out. Everyone laughed. But the next morning, her car was still in the parking lot. Amanda and I checked the security footage. She never left the lobby. I confronted Amanda, demanded answers. She broke down, said she didn't know how to leave, said she tried to quit, but every time she got far from the theater, she'd black out and wake up in her uniform behind the counter. "This place doesn't just keep the past," she whispered. "It feeds on it." And then she told me about the popcorn girl. Back in 1949, a girl named Esther used to work the concession stand. She died during a fire that gutted half the lobby. They never found her body. But ever since the reopening, people had reported seeing a girl's silhouette behind a concession glass, flickering briefly, pressed against the foggy glass like condensation. They say she watches. They say she's still serving. Only now the food is different. Underscore Underscore. One night, I stayed late, determined to see it myself. I brought a thermal camera and sat across from the concession window in the empty lobby. Around 2 a.m., the glass began to fog up. Then, from the inside, a faint outline appeared. Small hands, face close, breath steaming the inside. And then, a bag of popcorn slid across the inside of the counter. No one was inside. I checked. The popcorn machine was empty. But the smell, it was overwhelming. Warm, but off, like something sweet rotting beneath butter. I left it there, didn't touch it. But the next morning, the manager pulled me into the office. "There are rules," he said flatly. "You don't film. You don't eat. You don't ask. And you never, ever open the machines." He opened a drawer. Inside was my camera. Smashed. I hadn't told anyone I'd brought it. He leaned closer. "She's not fond of technology." Underscore. I quit that day. Tried to leave the city. Got as far as the interstate before I passed out at a rest stop. When I came to, I was back in a lobby, mopping the floor. My name tag was on upside down, but I didn't remember putting it on. Underscore. Underscore. Now I just play along. Smile. Tell people the popcorn machine's just decorative. But every night, just before the last show, I hear the kernels popping. And I don't look. Because some nights, I swear the smell changes. It gets sharper, heavier, like burnt sugar and bone. And just once, I saw a set of tiny blackened fingers pressed against the glass, waving. There's a single, unlisted screening that plays every Saturday at 12:13 a.m. in Auditorium 6. It's not on the website, not on the printed marquee. And yet, every week, someone shows up for it, drawn by word of mouth, or an anonymous message, or sometimes just a free ticket left beneath their windshield wiper. The theater staff never sells them the ticket. No one sees who prints them. But someone always walks through those doors at 12:13, and they don't come back. I first heard about it from my cousin Jake, who worked security at the Westwind Regal. He didn't believe the story at first. Thought it was some viral prank. But the theater logs confirmed it. One guest, every Saturday. One seat scanned. Never seen again. When he told his manager, they brushed it off. Probably an error. Happens with old scanners. But Jake was the kind of guy who didn't let things go. So one night, he stayed after hours, off the clock, hiding in the supply closet outside Auditorium 6. He texted me at 12:12. "Someone's going in. Alone." 12:16. Screen turn on. Static. 12:17. Sounds weird. Like water running. 12:18. I think I saw something in the aisle. Not the person. Something else. That was the last text he sent. I visited the theater the next day. Asked around. No one knew where Jake went. No siftload. No belongings left behind. But his security badge still pinged inside the building. Until exactly 12:13 a.m. the following Saturday. Then it vanished. I got the access logs. Fake names. Bogus emails. But always the same seat reserved. Row H, seat 3. I decided to go. Not out of bravery. Out of desperation. I needed to know what happened to him. Saturday, 11:58 p.m. I parked out back, slipped in through the loading dock. The building was quiet. Most of the lights were off, except for a faint glow from behind Auditorium 6's door, like candlelight. There was a single ticket waiting on the floor. Admit one. Row H, seat 3. The print was still warm. Inside, the theater was colder than it should have been. No ads played, just silence and static snow across the massive screen. I sat down in the assigned seat, heart thudding. 12:13 nachts. The screen went black. Then, a home video began playing. The footage was jittery and off-color. A shaky camcorder view of a birthday party. Balloons. A cake. Laughter. All grainy and distorted. I thought maybe it was someone's found footage film. But then I saw myself, as a child, sitting at the table, smiling. Exactly the way I looked in a photo from my 7th birthday. Except this was a moving recording. I didn't remember it ever being filmed. Behind me, my cousin Jake walked in a frame. He was older. Too old. Like how he looked just before he vanished. He stared into the camera, eyes glazed, mouth opening and closing, like he was trying to speak but couldn't. Suddenly the camera dropped, crashed to the ground. The footage fizzled out in static. And then a new clip. This time, a grainy shot of the theater lobby. The current one. Tonight's. I could see myself sitting in row H on the screen from a weird angle, as if something was watching from behind the projector. Then something moved behind me. On the screen. Something long-limbed, unnaturally thin, crawling between seats without making a sound. I turned around. Nothing. I turned back to the screen. The figure was now directly beside me. On screen, inches away. Its face was just noise. Like a TV with no signal. Blurred eyes. Buzzing outline. It slowly raised its hand. Pointed at me. The lights in the theater shut off completely. I bolted. I ran toward the exit, but the hallway had changed. It wasn't the theater anymore. It was a looping corridor, identical doorways, same faded carpet. Every door led back into the same auditorium 6. And in each one, the screen played something different. One showed my cousin Jake, standing silently in the lobby, face pixelated. Another showed my parents' house, dark, with someone watching through the blinds. A third showed a clip of me, lying in bed, asleep. The timestamp read, 2 minutes from now. I don't know how I got out. I remember running toward the lobby, and suddenly I was outside, in the rain, gasping for breath. No memory of the exit, just darkness. But the ticket was still in my hand, and it had changed. The time now read. Next showing, 12:13 a.m., Saturday. Bring someone new. I try to warn people. No one believed me, but I know I'm being watched. The screen in my bedroom glitches at 12:13 a.m. every Saturday. My phone battery drains at the same time. And a few nights ago, a new video showed up in my cloud storage. Just 3 seconds long. A single frame. Of me, sitting in row H. And behind me, barely visible, a hand resting on the seat beside mine. It's not part of the floor plan. There's no door on the map. No blueprints listing the room. But every projectionist at the Crescent Hills Theater knows it's there, the space behind screen 1. It's not a maintenance crawl space. It's something else. Something that breathes when you get too close. My first week as a projectionist, I kept hearing things during late shows. Scratching, like nails along drywall. Sometimes it was a faint thud, like someone bumping into the screen from the other side. At first, I blamed rats. Or air ducts. Old buildings make weird noises. But it kept happening, always during the same movie. A throwback series they played every Thursday night. The People Below. The films from the 70s. Obscure. Supposedly banned for a while. But no one could say why. What creeped me out wasn't the content. It was the film's format. Reels 1 through 5 played fine. Then, when Reel 6 started, the screen would bulge inward like something behind it was trying to push through. The first time I saw it, I paused the film. The bulge stopped. I walked down the stairs from booth. The auditorium was empty. I walked toward the screen. Slowly. It looked still now. Flat. Normal. But when I stood in front of it, I heard something from the other side. Not scratching this time. Whispering. Like several people, just behind the fabric, muttering the same word over and over. I couldn't tell what it was. Just a dry rhythm of breathless syllables. Then the screen shuddered, and I backed off. The manager, Mr. Leto, caught me leaving that night. He was standing in the hallway like he'd been waiting. "You didn't go back there, did you?" he asked. I asked what he meant. He just said, "That screen's not just a screen. It's a barrier. Don't test it." He told me there was once a door, long ago, before the renovation. Behind the screen. Maintenance access, they said. But when they opened it during construction in '95, 2 workers vanished. Just walked through and never came out. They sealed the entrance and built the new screen right over it. A few weeks later, during a storm, The power flickered during a showing. Reel 6 began playing without a bulb lit, but on the projection monitor, I could still see movement. Even without light, the film was somehow projecting itself. I leaned closer. It wasn't the movie anymore. It was live footage of the auditorium. But the people in the seats weren't the audience. They were pale, eyeless, unmoving. They sat completely still, hands folded, heads tilted at unnatural angles. Some had mouths open in frozen screams. Others had stitched lips. And worse, the theater looked older. Decayed. Like a version of this auditorium from decades ago, half collapsed. And behind the screen, something moved. A large figure, crawling sideways across the ceiling. Its limbs too long. Its head backwards. It disappeared behind the curtain. I raced downstairs, trembling. I had to see it. I pulled the curtain back. The screen was pulsing, bulging like a membrane. I reached out and touched it. It was wet. The next day, Reel 6 was missing from the archive. I asked the other projectionist, Dana, about it. She told me she never loads Reel 6 anymore. She skips it. Fades to black. Why? I asked. She hesitated. Because it's not part of the movie anymore. I checked the film myself. Reels 1 through 5 were Kodak. Standard labels. Reel 6 unmarked. No stamp. No stock ID. Just a strip of film in a black canister. When I shined light through it, no image appeared. But when I projected it, the shadows changed shape. They started to resemble me. I wanted answers. So I waited until a Thursday, loaded Reel 6, and slipped into the auditorium alone. I sat dead center. When the reel began, the temperature dropped. The speakers went silent. And then, the screen went translucent. I could see through it. A dim corridor behind it. Red wallpaper. Faint lamps glowing. Something swaying. It was a hallway, lined with mirrors. And in each mirror was a version of me, distorted, broken, aged. Some missing eyes. Some smiling too wide. One was on fire. Then, in the far end of the hallway, I saw a door open. And something stepped through. Not a person. A silhouette. Faceless. With a projector where its head should have been. It began walking toward me. Not on the screen, behind it. The fabric rippled. The bulge returned. This time, hands pressed through. Thin fingers. Then a face. Skin pulled tight over empty sockets. I screamed and pulled the fire alarm. The screen tore open with a shriek that didn't come from the speakers. And just like that, the image disappeared. The power cut out. The screen went flat. Mr. Leto fired me the next morning. Said nothing about the damage. Only handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo of the auditorium. Empty, except for one thing. A man standing behind the screen. His arms at his sides. Face shadowed. And the timestamp? 1995. The day the construction workers went missing. The ticket was always for the same seat. Row F, seat 13. And it was always purchased in cash. No phone number. No email. The man who sat there never moved. Never reacted. Never blinked. Not once. They called him Mr. Static. I was an usher at the old Bellspire Cinema. The kind of place where the carpets never lost that faint smell of soda syrup and mildew, and the light fixtures buzzed like distant whispers. Every Friday night, at 10 p.m. sharp, a man would walk in, dressed in a black overcoat and gloves. No matter the season, always the same seat, always the same row. F13. The movies didn't matter. Horror, comedy, animated. He never flinched, never sipped anything, never even looked at the screen. Just sat there, head slightly tilted, as if listening to something only he could hear. We tried talking to him once. My coworker, Ben, offered him a drink on the house. The man didn't turn or nod, didn't even breathe, but the straw in the cup bent inward, like something had sucked the air out of it. Ben quit 2 days later. I kept track. Every week, 10 p.m. Ticket stub, F13. Until one Friday, he didn't show up. We all noticed. The seat was off. It looked heavier, like something had sat in it for years. The cushion was more worn than the others. A faint outline remained in the fabric. And then, the projector malfunctioned. The movie wouldn't start. Instead, the screen glitched into black and white fuzz. And a sentence appeared. He missed his showing. Someone must sit. The screen shut off. The house lights stayed dim. Mr. Leto, the manager, yes, same guy from another location, he gets around, just stared at the screen, pale. Don't sit there, he said. Not unless you want him to borrow you. The following Friday, the ticket was back on the stub tray. Row F, seat 13. But no one bought it. That night, during the last show, I checked the seating monitor. It showed someone in F13. A red dot. But no one was there physically. The screen flickered again. Same words. He missed again. The debt grows. I tried to reset the system. The console wouldn't respond. Then the lights in the theater dimmed further, until it was almost pitch black. That's when I noticed something moving along the wall. Not a shadow. Something darker than the dark. It moved like smoke, but with shape. With intent. It flowed down the aisle toward row F. I ran in and pointed my flashlight. The beam cut through the air, but dissolved as it touched the aisle. And in the beam's edge, I saw the man. Briefly, like a frame out of sync. He looked up at me. His face wasn't there. Just static. Television static. But in the shape of a head. I blinked. He was gone. The screen was back to normal. The next week, a regular patron named Martin insisted on sitting in row F, claimed he didn't believe in theater ghost stories. He was found in the restroom an hour later, standing motionless, staring into the mirror. When someone asked if he was okay, he just said, I forgot the previews. I forgot who I am. He hasn't spoken since. Still institutionalized, I heard. By the 8th week, the ticket was back, same seat. Always untouched. Always waiting. So I did something stupid. I took it. I sat in F13. The seat was ice cold. Like metal left in winter wind. The moment I sat, the theater changed. The lights faded into red. The screen showed not a movie, but a hallway. Cracked tile floors. Old wallpaper. A projector at the end of it, humming. And behind the glass, someone watched. My reflection was there, but it blinked when I didn't. It smiled when I frowned. The walls of the theater seemed to push in, like the whole space was narrowing, trying to collapse into me. And then I heard a voice. No speakers, no mouth, just inside my ears. You are now the placeholder. He walks again. I awoke in the projection booth. Alone. It was morning. The only thing beside me was a freshly printed ticket. Row F, seat 13. But the showtime was scratched out. Replaced with permanent. Ever since then, every mirror flickers around me. Elevator reflections. Car windows. Even water. And in every reflection, I'm still sitting in that seat. Still wearing the coat. Still waiting. Sometimes I think I hear a projector spinning, just out of view. And when I blink, I see that hallway again. The one on the screen. Getting closer. The elevator went lower than the building plan showed. One button beneath, B2, worn and unlabeled. Just a faint groove where something once was. Theaters don't usually have archives, especially not a multiplex built in 1987. But the staff at the old Luxor 8 said there was a film library in the sub-basement. No one had been down there in years. No one was supposed to. It started when we switched over to digital. All the 35mm prints were boxed up and labeled for storage. But the tech who went down, Marcus, never came back up. Security found the elevator at B3, doors open, no one inside. His radio was found on the floor of the projection booth the next morning. Still on. It was playing something, a woman's voice, soft, unintelligible, repeating a phrase like a lullaby. Except the theater was empty. No films running. I got curious. Stupidly so. Marcus had left behind a notepad. Scrawled in were timestamps and real codes. But the last entry was underlined 3 times. Hashtag 4026, do not view. I matched the number to a case in the catalog. An unlabeled canister. No genre, no runtime, no date. Just one note. Origin unknown. I convinced the assistant manager to let me check inventory. He signed the access log and handed me the sub key. Back in an hour, he said, without looking me in the eye. I took the service elevator. Past B1, B2, then a a slow mechanical jolt. The button for B3 blinked once, and the elevator descended again. The doors opened to complete darkness. No lights, just a stale, damp smell and the low hum of something far off, like a projector left running. I turned on my flashlight. The room was massive, rows of rusting shelves, film canisters stacked like tombstones. Most were cracked, labels peeling off. The floor was wet, no pipes overhead, but a puddle stretched down the center aisle. And all the walls were covered in posters, torn, overlapping, and not a single one I recognized. Movies that didn't exist. Titles like The Observer, The House Where It Waits, and They Watch in Reverse. In the center was reel number 4026. Alone, on a pedestal. The film inside wasn't celluloid. It was translucent, almost like glass ribbon, and it was warm. I shouldn't have taken it, but I did. Back in the booth, I spooled it into the reel. Just a few seconds, just to see. It began without a title. Just a shot of an empty movie theater. Ours, but older. The carpet was different. The seats misaligned. Then movement. A figure entered frame. It walked in reverse, jerking unnaturally, like someone dragged backward. Its limbs bent the wrong way. Its face was blurred, but it had eyes. Too many eyes, blinking out of sync. It stared at the screen, and then slowly turned toward the camera. I paused the reel, but the figure kept turning. Its head twisted past the pause frame, until it was looking straight at me. Then the booth's lights flickered. The air grew wet, like breathing through a sponge. The screen in the theater glowed brighter, though no one was inside. I looked down from the window. The auditorium was empty, but the seats were rippling. Not shaking, rippling like waves under fabric. I yanked the power, but the film kept running. The reel turned by itself. I grabbed it barehanded. Bad idea. The film strip burned. I dropped it, and in that split second, my eyes caught a single frame. My reflection, sitting in the theater, mouth open, screaming, but no sound. The screen cut to black. I went back to the archive the next day, but there was no B3 button, not even a notch. When I showed the assistant manager the catalog, reel number 4026 wasn't listed. He said they never had a Marcus on staff. I asked to see the camera feed from booth. He pulled it up. I wasn't in it. Just a reel spinning on its own. A week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a strip of film, sealed in plastic. A single frame. My bedroom, shot from the ceiling corner. And on the back of the frame, etched faintly, "You've been added to the collection." Now, every time I walk past a dark theater, I hear it. That hum, the one from the basement. And sometimes, when I sleep, I dream of rows of seats stretching into the dark, and something walking backward toward me. His name was Walter Griggs. He'd been the projectionist at the Paramount Grand since 1961. Never missed a shift. Knew every bulb by touch, every flicker by memory. He even spoke to the machines like old friends. People said Walter loved the theater more than life itself. But one night, he just disappeared. It happened during a midnight screening of The Third Hour, an obscure foreign thriller from the 50s. Black and white, grainy, dull by most standards. But Walter insisted on screening it every year on the same night. March 9th, the night his wife vanished. She'd been in the audience when The Third Hour was shown back in '63. Just stood up halfway through and walked out. Never came back. And every year since, Walter screened it. Alone. Locked the doors. Ran it for himself. Until the night he didn't come out. I took over the booth 2 decades later. New staff. New management. But the building still creaked like it remembered. The booth was sealed when I arrived. Thick dust over the windows. Projector intact. Film reels shelved neatly like he'd just stepped away. There was even a cup of coffee on the console. Still warm. But no trace of Walter. We chalked it up to myth. An urban legend about obsession. But I never liked working that booth alone. Especially not on March 9th. This year, the manager said someone had anonymously rented the auditorium. Paid in cash. No name. And the movie requested? The Third Hour. I should have walked. But curiosity outweighed common sense. I threaded the reel, flipped the switches, and let the film roll. Black and white footage lit up the screen. A slow pan across a desolate train station. Wind. Dust. A single man standing on the platform, unmoving. But the man wasn't in the original cut. I'd watched this film during college. I knew it by heart. This figure. He wore a projectionist uniform. A flat cap. Rolled sleeves. And he was facing the camera. But had no face. Just blank skin. Smooth. Like wax before features are carved in. Then the screen flickered. The film glitched backward, playing scenes in reverse. People unscreaming. Dust recoiling into shoes. And then, the booth camera feed switched on by itself. I saw myself, standing at the console, hands frozen on the dials. And behind me, another man. Out of focus. Hat low. Slowly reaching toward the light bulb over my head. I spun around. No one, but the bulb flickered. And then I noticed it, the coffee cup. It was back. On the console. Fresh. Steaming. The film kept running. The man on the train platform now stood in front of a theater screen. He lifted his hand. In his palm was a frame of film. He fed it into a projector. Suddenly, I heard another reel spinning in the booth. When I hadn't loaded, the second projector began casting an image onto the sidewall. The audience. Tonight's. Except they weren't moving. Just staring forward. But no one had come in. The box office was closed. I leaned toward the booth window to see. The theater was full. Every seat taken. And in the front row, Walter, hands folded, staring straight at me. I shut down the system, pulled the reels, cut the power. Everything went dark. Then, a flicker. A frame appeared on the blank screen. A single shot of me in the booth. But I was older, wrinkled, same clothes, same hands, still standing, still threading reels. Behind me, on the wall, hung a photograph, a plaque. It read, "In Memoriam, Walter Griggs, 1930, present." Not past, present. I fled, never looked back. But some nights when I drive by the Paramount Grand, I see lights spilling from the projection window. No movies listed, no showtimes posted, but the bulb glows. And if you get close enough, you can hear it. The reel, still turning. It never shows up on the schedule, not on the projector, not on the booth computer. But sometimes if you look into a mirror, any reflective surface inside the theater, you'll catch a glimpse of it. A black and white film, always grainy, no sound, just flickering shadows and slow-moving scenes that shouldn't exist. They call it reflection, with an X. I first noticed it cleaning the bathrooms after closing. The mirror above the sink was cracked in the corner, warped slightly. When I looked up, I saw the lobby behind me. Except it wasn't the real lobby. There were no posters, no popcorn machines, just a long, narrow hallway in black and white. The lights buzzed in slow motion. And at the far end, someone was staring. Not at the mirror, at me. I turned fast. Nothing there. When I looked back, the mirror was normal again. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But then I saw it again, this time in the silver slushy machine in the concession area. The reflection bent at the right angle, and behind the plastic lid, I saw the seats of Auditorium 3. Except they were empty, except for one seat. A woman sat there, her head tilted all the way back, mouth open, eyes rolled upward like she was in a trance. I blinked. The machine went back to showing ice swirling. I became obsessed, started testing surfaces around the theater. The windows, soda fountains, bathroom sinks, polished exit signs. Each one, under the right lighting or angle, played a different scene. Scenes from the theater, but not this version of it. A parallel copy. Decayed. Warped. Sometimes, the film would show me myself, sweeping the floor or standing behind the register, but doing things I wasn't doing. Once I saw myself inside the screen of Theater 5, pacing like an animal, whispering into the curtain. I finally told my coworker, Lex. She didn't laugh. Just said, "Yeah, I've seen it too." Then she told me something worse. You're not supposed to acknowledge it, because the moment you do, it starts showing more. And she was right. That night, I closed the place alone. Every mirror flickered. Every puddle on the tile moved the wrong way. In a supply closet mirror, I saw a version of myself walking backward across the lobby, eyes solid black. In the soda machine, I saw Lex, except her mouth opened wider and wider until her head split in half, clean down middle. No sound, no music, just frames, moving images, and the logo of the film burned into the bottom corner. Reflection X. I went to management, showed them what I saw. They fired me on the spot, said I was compromising guest experience. But the images followed me. At home, bathroom mirror, toaster reflection, even the blank screen of my phone before it powered on. Each time, the scenes were darker, slower, and the person watching me, he was getting closer. He wears a theater uniform, old-fashioned, double-breasted coat, no face. But the closer he gets in the reflections, the colder the glass becomes. I can feel his breath now when I brush my teeth. One night, I turned off every reflective surface in my apartment. TV unplugged, mirrors covered, even my coffee pot hidden. Then, I made a mistake. I looked into the window. The glass showed the theater lobby, and me, standing at the concession counter, serving someone with no head. I blinked. The glass cracked. From the inside. I don't leave the house much now, but sometimes the neighbors say they hear old movies playing from my room, even though I don't own a TV anymore. And I swear, when I open the microwave door, I see the theater screen, and something is sitting in the projection booth, wearing my face. Auditorium 9 was sealed shut in 2006. Water damage, they said. Structural issues. But the real reason? People stopped coming out. The first incident was during a matinee screening of Glass Window. A psychological thriller, nothing supernatural. But halfway through, staff noticed something odd. The movie didn't end. The runtime was 112 minutes. But the feed kept going. At 125 minutes, guests were still watching. Still motionless. At 130 minutes, they shut down the power. Nothing happened. The projector kept running. The screen kept flickering. And the audience? Still there. Still staring forward. It took emergency responders to evacuate them, but none of them remembered entering the theater. They all had the same story. I was waiting for the trailers to start. They locked the auditorium, barred the door, removed the listing from the master schedule. Still, some nights, the lights inside would turn on. No one would schedule them. No one would enter. And always a faint audio loop leaking from under the door. A mix of reversed whispering and a heartbeat. I didn't believe it until I saw it myself. I worked midnight maintenance. My key card didn't open Auditorium 9, but the hallway that led to it always felt colder than the rest. One night, I found a flashlight left on outside the door. Faint scratches along the frame, like someone had tried to claw their way out. I pressed my ear to the metal. Behind the door, I heard my name. The manager, Paula, warned me never to speak to it. It's not the room that's cursed, she said. It's what it plays. She showed me a security recording from a week before. 1:15 nachts. Door visibly sealed. Lights off. But the footage showed a glowing screen inside, playing a movie. No people, just a loop of the empty auditorium itself, filmed from different angles. And in the center of every frame, a red notebook on seat C4. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I accessed the emergency electrical panel and rerouted power to Auditorium 9. The screen turned on by itself. Projector spinning, even though the booth was dark. And slowly, the door unlatched. I stepped inside. The air was thick, not just humid, dense like walking through syrup. The screen played nothing. Just a black background with a blinking red dot in the center. No sound. No seats, except one. Seat C4, with a notebook on it. I reached for it, but the screen behind me changed. It showed me, standing in a room, hand extended. Then it zoomed in on my back, and something behind me. A figure, tall, wearing a mask made of blank film strip, its texture flickering. It stood less than a foot from me. I spun around. Empty. But the notebook was gone. The screen showed it now, lying in a completely different auditorium. Not one I recognized. Then came the whispering again. But this time, it spoke in full sentences. Not out loud. Inside my head. All stories must be told. You watched. Now you must play. The screen split vertically. One half still showed the auditorium. The other showed a recording booth. Old Mike dusty controls. A glowing light. It was my room at home. I ran out, but the hallway had changed. No more posters. No staff photos. The tile was darker. Sticky. The lights above flickered at irregular intervals. And every sign now read, Auditorium 9, now playing. No movie title. Just those 2 words. I don't work there anymore, but I still have the dreams. In them, I'm in that seat, C4, reading the notebook. Its pages are blank until I think a thought. Then the words appear, scene by scene, of everything I fear. And somewhere, the theater plays it back, endlessly, until someone else walks in and sits down. Every theater has curtains, but this one, it moves when there's no draft. And worse, it moves when you talk about it. Not when you look, only when you speak. The curtain in Auditorium 4 isn't like the others. Most are standard pullbacks, mechanical, controlled from the booth. This one drapes across the far left wall, not covering the screen, just hanging like a stage backdrop. The problem is there's no stage behind it, just a solid concrete wall. At least, that's what the blueprint says. But if you stand close enough, you'll hear something breathing behind it. I was assigned to clean Auditorium 4 every Tuesday morning. No movie scheduled, no power to the booth, just vacuuming and wiping down the armrests. The first time I heard it, I was under the seats, untangling some headphone wires a kid had dropped. A gentle rustling above, like fabric shifting. But when I stood up, the curtain was still, dead still. Then I dropped the broom. The handle clattered loudly. And that's when the curtain moved, inward, like something behind it had startled. I stared, not blinking, not breathing. It didn't move again, until I whispered, "What are you?" And then it rippled, like someone lightly pressed a hand into the other side. I didn't wait. I left early. Over the next few days, I started hearing things. Not in the auditorium, in my headset. I'd be sweeping in Auditorium 1, and suddenly I'd hear faint static through the walkie, followed by the slow creaking of fabric, as if something enormous was shifting inside a tight space. Then a voice, closer, only once, just that one word. I told my co-worker, Elise. She'd worked there longer. She just nodded and said, "It's waking up again." Apparently, years ago, a group of kids snuck in during a late-night showing and dared each other to go behind the curtain. Only one did. The other said he just vanished. The tape from a booth showed the curtain folding inward like it swallowed him. The footage was destroyed by management. Elise said she only saw a copy, and that ever since then, the curtain breathes when it's hungry. That night, I stayed after hours, brought a flashlight, set my phone to record. I walked into Auditorium 4, alone. The curtain was motionless. I whispered, "I want to understand." It twitched. One fold peeled back slightly, revealing more curtain, like it stretched deeper than it should. I walked closer. The air grew thick, warm, and damp. My flashlight flickered, even though the batteries were fresh. I lifted the edge of the curtain. Behind it was another curtain, then another, and another, each slightly darker, slightly wetter. I kept pulling them aside, one after another, until I wasn't in the theater anymore. I was in a narrow hallway, lined with curtains on both sides, breathing in sync. Every few seconds, I heard soft footsteps echoing behind me. But when I turned, there was only the way I came. And now, the curtain was gone. I walked forward. The floor felt like old carpet soaked in something cold. The lights above were old fixtures, but they flickered without bulbs. And then I saw the screen. A large blank screen stood at the end of the hall. No seats, no booth, just the screen and a single chair. On the screen was my face from earlier that night. Walking in, then another version of me, stepping behind the curtain, then another, and another, all looping, all slightly different. In one, I turned back and screamed. In another, I vanished. In one, I never existed. The breathing behind me stopped, and a voice, so quiet it wasn't sound, said, "You're inside now." I blacked out. I woke up outside the theater, leaning against the building wall. No memory of exiting. My phone was gone, but someone had left a torn scrap of red fabric in my pocket. The same fabric as the curtain. Now, when I speak out loud, anywhere, I sometimes hear it twitching behind walls. I've even started seeing folds of red fabric where there should be none. In my closet, in the gaps under doors, in the seams of elevator walls. And when I hear people whisper, I swear I hear it breathing, waiting. They unplugged it in 1999, but it still runs. Hot, bubbling, popping, and no one refills it. The story goes that a fire nearly gutted the Riverview Cinema during a late-night double feature. The sprinkler system failed, but the fire never spread because it never left the concession counter. Specifically, the popcorn machine. I started working there last year. The machine was already off limits. Chained shut, a faded-out of order sign zip-tied to the lid. But every night around 11 p.m., just as the last movie ended, it would start up. You could hear it from across the lobby. Pop, 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 even though there was no power and no kernels inside. Management claimed it was residual heat, some kind of mechanical memory, but the staff had other ideas. They said the machine was the first thing to melt in the '99 fire, but no one could ever prove it because the fire never left a mark. No scorch, no smoke damage, no fire report, just one guy missing. Earl, the concessionist that night. Some say he stayed behind to close up and was never seen again. Others say he's still inside the machine. I didn't believe any of it until I worked the closing shift solo. It was 10:55. I was wiping down the counters when I heard it. The sound of metal warming. The soft hiss of oil. I turned. The popcorn machine light was glowing. Unplugged. Still glowing. I got closer. The glass was fogging up from the inside. But not with steam, with breath. I wiped the patch clean. Inside, something was moving. Not popping corn. Not heat rising. Something curling. I backed away and turned off the breaker to the concession panel. No change. I opened the back of the machine with the override key. Just once. The heat that blasted out hit me like a furnace. But the coils weren't lit. There was no heating element. Just a metal basin and a single blackened glove. Melted around the edges. Burned through the palm. It was resting on a small pile of ash. No bones. No popcorn. But the machine started again with the door wide open. Popping. Popping. And something laughing inside the walls. The next day, the glove was gone. The ash too. But the out-of-order sign was replaced with one that read, "Do not feed." I didn't put it there. No one admitted they did. Over the following weeks, the popping became louder. Sometimes it wouldn't stop all night. And then people started complaining. Not about the noise. About the smell. Burned sugar. Metal. And something else. Something sour. Like teeth cooked too long. One night, a kid broke in with friends. TikTok. They filmed themselves shoving a full bag of popcorn into the chute. The video was never posted, but the phone was found the next morning, melted to the floor in front of the machine. The grainy last frame showed the reflection in the machine glass. A man hunched behind the machine with no eyes and no jaw, just smoke curling out of his throat. We chained it tighter, bolted it to the counter, but it doesn't matter. The glass still fogs. The popping still starts. And lately, bags of popcorn go missing. Full ones. Just vanish. Like something is feeding again. I've started hearing a new sound now. Not popping. Not laughing. Chewing. Wet. Slow. Mechanical. And once, during a midnight deep clean, I swear I saw something in the reflection of the hot tray. A face. Melted into the metal. Its mouth never stops moving, even though there's nothing left to chew. Now, I won't go near the counter after 10:30, and I never eat the popcorn, because some nights, if you grab a handful too fast, you'll feel it twitch, like something bit back. It was supposed to be off. No showing. No staff. Power cut at the main. But when I walked through Auditorium 2 after midnight, the screen was glowing. Not bright. Just enough to see shadows moving on the walls that shouldn't have been there. The weirdest thing? No projector was running. I know, because I was the projectionist that night. We've been having minor electrical issues all week. Lights randomly flickering. Sound bleeding between auditoriums. But this was different. When I looked into the booth window, I saw the real arms completely still. The projector screen inside was black. Yet the auditorium screen flickered with faint, shifting images like a half-faded slideshow. No color, no motion, just stills that kept changing. One moment, a long hallway. The next, an overhead shot of empty seats. Then, a shot of me standing at the booth window. Except in the image, my mouth was open. I ran into the booth. Triple-checked everything. The system was shut down. All cables disconnected. I looked out again. The screen was still on, but now it showed static. Analog snow, thick and slow like it was underwater. Then it formed a shape. A face. Blank eyes. No mouth. Just staring. I blinked. It vanished. The screen was dark again. The next morning, I checked the CCTV logs for that auditorium. From 12:13 a.m. to 12:51 a.m., the footage was corrupt, but there was one still frame saved. Black and white. Low resolution. It showed the auditorium completely empty, except for a single figure hanging upside down from the ceiling, limbs stretched like a spider. No facial features, just a stretched shadow under it. The timestamp had no time, just the word, playing. After that night, Auditorium 2 got weirder. Guests would walk out halfway through a movie, saying it felt like someone else was in the film. One guy left screaming, convinced the screen had blinked at him. Another swore he saw an image of his own funeral, spliced between trailers. I ran a full diagnostic sweep, cleaned the lens, replaced the HDMI relay, even reinstalled the firmware. Nothing stopped it. Then one night, I decided to film it. Just on my phone, record the screen after shutdown. I left the auditorium. Came back 30 minutes later. The screen was still on. But now, the footage it showed was my apartment. Same curtains. Same lamp. Same photo of my dog on the side table. Except in the reflection of the TV in that footage, there was someone standing behind me. I raced home. My apartment was empty. Nothing seemed disturbed. But the TV screen had faint lines burned into it, like static that never fully left. The next night, the phone I left recording was gone. But in its place, left on the auditorium seat, was a single printed frame, an image of the screen. And in that image, me, watching myself, watching myself, watching myself. Endless recursion, a loop that never ends. Now, even with the projector removed, the screen won't turn off. We've tried painting over it. Doesn't matter. The paint fades by morning. We tried boarding it up. The board's warped. The screen always finds a way to glow, like it wants to be seen, like it's showing someone something from somewhere else. And if you stare at it long enough, you'll see yourself walk in, from a door that doesn't exist. They said it was the last reel ever made by the director, but no one remembers his name. The film doesn't have a title, just a number etched into the metal canister. 13. We found in the storage basement of the Crestmore Theater, inside a locked cabinet buried behind old folding chairs and broken velvet ropes. No labels, no distribution codes. But when we opened the canister, the reel was pristine. Too pristine, like it had never been touched. And yet it smelled old. Not of dust, but something else. Something like rain-soaked paper left in a hot attic. The manager thought it was a lost indie horror short. He scheduled it as a secret midnight showing. No trailers, no fanfare. Only a few of us stayed. Mostly staff. A few regulars. The curious. I was up in the booth, loading the reel myself. It threaded like silk. No friction. No resistance. But as soon as I turned on the projector, the room got colder, and the film began. Without an opening frame. No credits. Just a door. Not filmed, photographed. Still images cutting from one to the next, each closer than the last. Click. A doorknob. Click. The grain of the wood. Click. The space under the frame. Something dark pressed against it. No sound, but everyone in the theater leaned forward at once, like it was whispering only to them. Then the screen went black, and for a full minute, nothing. No picture. No light. Then, the projector spooled backward. Not on the reel. Inside the booth. The levers moved by themselves. The gears rotated in reverse. The film continued forward, but the machine was undoing itself. I yanked the emergency lever. The projector kept running, and on the screen, an image of the theater itself. Auditorium 1. Same angle, same seats, but they were empty, and the walls were crumbling. Then, seat by seat, the audience appeared, one by one, all of them staring at me, except the versions of them on screen were older. worn, some barely alive, some already decomposing. One of the guests in the real theater began to cry. He said he saw his wife next to him, but she died a year ago. Another ran out, swearing the screen was showing his house, his bedroom, his grave. The film began glitching. Frames burned as they played. The images melted into one another. Eyes replaced doorknobs. Mouths opened into stairwells. And in the center of every frame, a shape, thin, wrapped in film, wearing the reel like a mask, with the perforated edges draped down like teeth. The power died, but the screen stayed lit. The reel kept turning, though the projector was off. And then came the final scene. A mirror. On the screen, a mirror in a dark room. No deflection. Then, slowly an image formed. But it wasn't the audience. It wasn't the booth. It was the back of the theater. From a screen's point of view, it showed a figure standing in front of the screen. Only one, draped in strips of celluloid. And in its hands, a fresh reel, labeled 14. The screen cut to black. The film stopped. The reel snapped. And when I checked the booth, the canister was empty. Not broken. Not burned. Just gone. No one has played a film in that theater since. The projector won't respond. The light won't power on. But every Friday at midnight, the screen glows. And somewhere in the dark, a new reel waits to be seen.